Now, as a booking talent 7 or 8 months out, a bad idea due to the landscape changing so much over that time that something better would come along, since most promoters don't book talent that far out unless they're in high demand.
We needed to move fast because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had heard the rumblings that Dreamwave was possibly going to come back, and I wanted to act fast and try to get the talent locked down as fast as possible and know what I was going to be doing. Not really worried about what the other promotions were going to be doing, but knowing what I was going to be doing for my event. And it had been something that I had been working on. We started working on June 2019 in about October or November of 2018, because I knew that it was what I wanted to do, and I knew that we were going to be able to pull it off. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, here in a couple minutes, but I believed I needed to lock down the best talent as soon as possible before somebody else did, because a lot of not everybody's schedule gets fully booked up, in November for June of the next year, but sometimes it does. And you have to be able to know where you're going. And it wasn't just booking for the June 1st event, it was getting an idea of where we wanted to go for things like our champions and our storylines, and kind of writing that whole thing out. Because the original plan was I was going to run June 1st, I was going to run a date in September, and then I was going to come back and run one last date in December.
Now, you did a podcast where it seemed like you threw everything against the wall to see what would stick, to figure out who was interfering with the booking of that June 1st event. And I did reporting on that podcast. Should I have done it? I don't know. I got heat for it because there's people that did not like their names being dropped. And do you want to retract anything you said that night?
We had to throw whatever at the wall to see what would stick. At that point in June, when I issued that podcast, I was so not really upset with myself, a little bit upset with myself for letting my guard down, but so upset with everything else that I needed to throw whatever I could at the wall and see what would stick, because there were so many possibilities of who could have been in on this thing getting done the way that it was done, and finishing it off the way that it got finished off. I do have some retractions. I apologize to anybody that was not involved with it, that was named for being involved. I'm not going to name names. You know who you are if you were involved. You know if you weren't involved. If you weren't involved and want to talk, come talk to me. I'm not a hard man to find. But I have to believe that this was a conglomerate effort by a lot of different people to try to put the final nail in the coffin of my company. And I don't appreciate that, because I work hard. I work very hard on these events.
Now, there's many charges flying about when you had to cancel that June 1st show, and we'll get to that in a bit. Some of the charges were pretty way over the top, but because of what the perception is of you, it carried some sort of level of verisimilitude due to the extreme heat you have with a lot of people. Have you finished giving out the refunds to everyone who bought a pre-sale ticket?
I have not. There's been some delays on that. I'm tracking down emails and getting all of that done. I hope to have that done by the first of the year, as it's kind of a timing thing. The holiday season is coming up, and it's not that I'm pushing these people off and I know what, doing what I did in 2012 with Workers. These people are going to get their money back. It's just going to take me a little bit more time, and I also have to reconverse with my attorney about how those ticket refunds will come into the litigation that will be coming after the first of the year.
Now, how many people approximately are left to be refunded, do you think?
20 to 30.
20 to 30? Okay.
If I had to put a dollar amount on it, I'd say it's about $250.
Okay. Now, once the show was canceled, and we know why it was canceled, your sworn enemies came out of the woodwork blaming you for the canceled event, wanted criminal charges against you for running a scam. Now, there was definitely fraud documented in electronic communications between you and Robert Anthony on a ring that never came, using a year-old picture of a wreck in Wisconsin. My question to you is, have you filed a lawsuit against Robert Anthony? And I think you already kind of answered it. To recover damages from this canceled event and all the new drama it caused you.
Litigation is coming on that after the first of the year. I know Mr. Robert Ego Anthony thinks he's going to get off scot-free on this, and whoever else was involved. That's not going to happen. And I'm going to explain why this lawsuit is going to be filed. It, to me, is not about the money lost. Money comes, money goes. The only thing that I have left that I've built for the past 17 years is my name. And I don't like that somebody had that kind of power over me to be able to almost completely bury what was left of my name to begin with by fraud. Because Grimy will tell you, I was at the venue that day. Pay envelopes were already full. They were in the lockbox, ready to go. I was waiting on my Sound of Music guy to get there. And I get a message from Tony Rican, who was my second in command, that the ring has been in an accident. And then everybody starts to do more digging. And the more we find out, the worse it gets. Now, there could have been some things that could have been done differently. My original plan for the ring for June 1st was Joey Grunge. Joey Grunge and I had a little bit of a falling out. I could have made the phone call that day to try to see if he could have saved it. I didn't want to deal with the drama. I didn't want to deal with having to put up with a fight with Grunge on the day of this event. The other
Stop 1 second. Now, Grunge, you had some sort of issue with him the lead up to that.
Yes, I'll get into that too, because why the hell not?
Continue.
I was told that there was a certain wrestler on Grunge's roster that was paying for his names to come in and helping to fund the company, and the kid came to me and didn't believe that Grunge was treating him fairly and Grunge was giving him everything that he was promised. So I went to Grunge, being the type of guy that I am, and I said, look, if you're not going to use this kid right, somebody's going to, and you're going to lose this. And Grunge denied everything, and I had all the messages that I sent to Grunge, and I'm like, well, somebody's lying here. Either you are lying or he is lying.
Or they don't have or nobody's on the same page.
Right. So I went to bat for the kid, and that was falling out of Grunge and I. I haven't talked to him since before the June 1st show. I could have had him possibly bail me out of that situation. I just didn't want to deal with the excess drama that day. I had enough on my plate, as a lot of you know. If you're a promoter and it's show day, you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Then we moved to the new game plan of Brian Blade. Well, when this new deal from Ego came along for the ring, I decided that I was going to try to save a little bit of money and give Ego the benefit of the doubt. And what actually happened was I should have had Blade bring his ring back from Nebraska that Friday night, but because we were all under the assumption that everything was a go with Ego, I told Brian Blade to leave his ring in Nebraska the Friday night before the June 1st show.
Another repeated charge, and certain people wanted me to answer the question instead of you. It was not my place to do so, and besides the fact I could get it very wrong and get even more drama and nuclear heat. They say you're using forbidden sources of funding for the events and you should be penalized for it. What sources of funding have you been using to run the shows you've run or tried? I've
gotten investors and I've gotten personal funding of my own that I have saved up over time to be able to fund these events. And I also have some help from family, but That to me does not. You can penalize me all you want. Go for it, because I'm not going to stop running events. It might take me a couple years to come back again. It might take me less time than that. But I'm not going to stop running events. I'm not going to turn over and just be done with this when I've poured legitimately 17 years of my life into this business and wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I believe that sources of funding shouldn't matter as long as the bills are getting paid and the talent's getting, the venue's getting paid, the rentals are getting paid for, the talent's getting paid, and all of that. I don't think it's fair for everybody to point the finger and go, well, he might be using the penalizable sources of income. Because if you go back and look at Rex Gill, he was probably running his company out of welfare.
Yes, federal benefit money, yes, would be a forbidden source, and that's been the accusation that's been thrown at you. They wanted me to answer that question. They've even called me your business partner, which I don't know how being a hired cameraman makes one a business partner, since I have contributed no money to this operation. So how could I be a business partner?
I can sit here with a straight face and tell you the Grammy has never put $1 into the RWF. It's been the opposite way around, as I paid him to come up and film my events. And actually, to my credit, when he showed up June 1st and didn't know that the event was canceled by the time he got there, I still paid him. I didn't pay him the full rate that I would have if the show would have happened, because he didn't have to.
I even considered turning it down, but I don't know. I probably should have, since people were complaining about me getting paid.
It's a matter of respect. I believe that anybody that comes in and does a trade for a promoter deserves to get paid. The only thing that I don't pay for is security. I think, unless it's a high top of the line security guard. But, that's everybody's personal preferences on how they want to pay their people and their people involved.
Now, after this latest incident, I'd stated in an editorial comment, I do not think there's any way you can run an event in the Midwest, because there's a lot of people, there's not very many people who trust you. Certainly local talent is going to be hard to acquire. You're not able to trust anybody else either. You disagreed with that stance. So tell me, how can you run an event in the state with such intense nuclear heat against you, and so many saying you should be permanently blackballed from the wrestling business?
Well, it's like I said earlier about Rex Gill. Everybody wanted to see him blackballed, but nobody wanted to put it in the work to get it done. And I think if people are going to go that far to see somebody be blackballed that busts their butt to be able to put on events and make them as successful and as enjoyable for the fans as possible, I think that's a little bit lowball move. I don't think that I'm done here in Illinois. I think that time will tell all. I don't have to have all of the same talent that everybody else has. Matter of fact, one of the things we did differently with the June 1st show was book a lot of talent that had never been here before. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
But then again, they're going to be more expensive because you're having to pay the track costs.
It depends. It depends on what kind of deals you can work out, how good of a negotiator you are. But I'm not worried about it. I think that I'll have my day again, and I think that some talent is going to come around when some things change. Because, as I said a couple weeks ago on the podcast, I've always got something in the works, whether it be a booking or stuff for the podcast, or trying to partner with somebody to bring a show to the area. I've always got something in the works, and I'm not going to. I'm here to tell you, and I'm here to tell everybody else, I am simply not just going to give up. I have too much fight left in me for that.
Now, one of your co-hosts on podcast, Steve Kane, he departed as a result of a canceled show, and then before the June 1st event, and then he came back twice. What is the state of your relationship with Steve Kane?
Z-Thane and I's relationship is very good. There was a situation that went down before the June 1st event with some of our guests that I rushed a little bit. I had so much on my plate at the time getting ready for June 1st that I made a swift decision. I regret making that decision as swiftly as I did, and that's why I hired him back. He's been a big part of the RWF for our last event in Ashton in 2009. Steve knows his stuff. He's brought a lot of great guests to the podcast. He's done a lot of good for RWF over the years. The same way Tony Rican has been a big help over the past couple of years. And it's people like that that I need on my side to be able to make this all work. And I regret ever booking Robert Ego Anthony for the ring on June 1st. Because if I would have stuck with Brian Blade, that show would have happened without a shadow of a doubt. The only way it wouldn't have is if Blade's truck caught fire coming down the interstate. I mean, everything in hindsight, it's always 2020. But I know now that there are people that I can trust and there are people that I can't. Brian Blade is one of the guys that I can trust because in 2016, he was there when I needed the ring. He came with the ring in the middle of the snowstorm. And I think him and I are going to be doing a lot more in the future together. And I know that's going to piss people off, but I really don't care. I'm not giving up on this business. This business hasn't given up on me. I know it may seem like that to a lot of people, but I still have my supporters and followers out there, the same way everybody does. It's just I have more detractors than I do followers.
You pitched going down to Springfield, Illinois to, I guess, do something for Pinfall Wrestling Association, and as somebody who's on the board, I am hesitant to green light it or at least voice support for it because I know what's on the minds of several people that they would have a very negative, I know they would have a very negative reaction if you happen to pop in.
I think that's good and bad though, because it's going to make people step their game up. One of the things about me is I don't pull any punches. I'll come in and I have no problem telling a promoter, look, you need to do this, this, and this to get from point A to point B. And that's what pisses a lot of people off, but it's the truth of the matter. I don't do this because I'm selfish or I'm trying to push my power in somebody else's company. I'm doing this because I want to see the business succeed as a whole and everybody succeed and everybody make money. I'd love to go down and work for PWA. I've talked to Brian, I've talked to a couple of the other people that are there. I know there are some people there that have a problem with me, but I think that, given the right circumstances, I could be of some help to PWA or any other Fed in Illinois that would be willing to use me or beyond.
I'm kind of skipping ahead, but one of those individuals you called out on a podcast prior to the ill-fated June 1st event, you had been criticizing the Wrestling for a Cure charity, and I gave him time on my show to respond to you. He wants a retraction of your negative comments towards that charity, and your statements were damaging to charity efforts and fundraising, and wanted a retraction or be legal action. Your response, and why did you go after them?
I had no issue with Wrestling for a Cure until they started poking jabs at me. Timothy Gibbons used to be a regular on my weekly podcast. Had no problem with the guy until the guy started to pull punches. I set up.
When was that?
I set up June 1st of 2019 and November of 2018, and it was right after I had booked Rob Leach and Jake, the ref from PWA, that I get a message from somebody that was down at RCW where this happened, that they overheard Gibbons telling people not to work for me. And that's when.
But you had him on your podcast. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. He was on the podcast when he was still with PWA before Wrestling for a Cure became a thing. He was
So the first year.
first couple of years.
Okay.
I had no problems with Givens up until then, but then I caught Givens in lies. I'd said some things to Joey Grunge, and things that I told Givens got back to Grunge, and so on and so forth. And that's when I knew that the guy was, how do I want to put this? I guess not playing fair sides of the fence, telling me one thing and telling people something else. That's when the first couple problems started, and I decided I was just going to let it go. But last November, when he was starting to tell people that they shouldn't work for me, that's when the fuel got added to the fire, and I came down and said, look, I don't care what you guys do. You're running once a year. It's great. It's for charity. All of that. I said some things that I didn't really mean because they didn't have their numbers for the first year publicly posted to where they could be accessed like that. Once that documentation was given, I retracted some of my statements. I think it's a wonderful thing what they do. I just don't think it's fair for a promoter that's running an event one time a year to tell workers that they can't go work elsewhere. I thought that was kind of a little lowball move on his part. I had no problems with Jason, the other guy.
Jason Wells.
Yeah, I had no problem with him. He came on the show, and a lot of the problems with him started after I had to cancel the show in 2017 that was set for Princeton because
2018, isn't it?
2017.
Okay.
So, they were upset about that, and they didn't understand how I was just going to cancel last minute. And I said, look, you don't know the circumstances behind this cancellation. I think that's when Givens started to be sour on me, and I wish them nothing but the best with Wrestling for a Cure. I'm going to leave them alone. They do what they do. I ask the same respect in return. When I promote again, I don't want to be messed with. I don't need you telling people they don't need to be working for me. It's dirty business, and I don't like doing dirty business. I've been known to do some dirty business in the past, but I don't like having to play that card.
And I'm pretty sure there'll be a request for a response, and I will grant that time if I get a request. So, all right. Another major bone of contention is go back to about early 2018. There was a show at 01 between the Warhorse Jake Parnell versus Gary J that drew, I guess, set you off. Now, I was there for it live, and I was grossed out, and it's like, it's like it was a sight to see. It was a wild event. But let me get to what's going to go. The anger at you and your colleagues over criticism of 01 and the fishhook incident, particularly a member of the personnel who is quadriplegic, they didn't accept your apology back then. To dissipate their anger, you in response said, if you don't accept your apology, it's on them. Why?
Because the individual that's a quadriplegic was making Facebook posts that made him appear as he had a position of power in 01. And I simply went to the guy and I said, look, I'm not trying to be a mean guy when I say this, but if you don't have an official piece of power in 01, you should not be making these posts because it
But did you, being that you're not a member of the company, you were making an assumption?
A little bit, yes. But it was also based on the verbiage and things that he used in some of those posts promoting the 01 events that almost made him sound like an owner of 01 or one of the members of the board. And I don't know if he was or not. It was just the way things looked.
He is a member of the board, so.
It was just the way things looked to me. And I'll apologize again to the guy and to 01, but I'm not going to apologize for my criticism over the fishhook incident. I believe that was taken way, way, way too far.
Well, I'll concede They went too far in that match. I wish that didn't happen,
Okay.
but it did, and
This is
done.
Right. This is my take on that. Just because WWE and All Elite and all these companies want to rip their ring apart, rip everything apart, and expose boards, doesn't mean you have to do it on an indie level. I believe that on the indie level, there should still be a level of kayfabe that is kept. And what I mean by that is the ring is one of the most sacred things we have in the wrestling business. I don't think to a fan's eye it should be revealed that this is our trade. This is what the ring is. This is, hey, there's padding on the ring. I like the mystique of people not knowing what that ring is made of and not knowing, all the tricks of the trade.
But in the age of the internet, we all know because we can look it up. What is Green's View made of? We can look that up.
That's
it
true.
was on Wikipedia. What secrets are being kept from us? Not very many anymore.
And that's true. You do have the internet and things like that, but at the same time, for your own audience, you have to try to make it as believable as possible.
Verisimilitude. Keep a level of verisimilitude, but it should be done during the show, but not, let's say, during teardown. Now, we know, I don't have a problem, really, that fans see what a ring is made of because they can look it up. It's not going to hurt them. It's not going to change the perception of professional wrestling. For the longest time, certain people would say, well, you should wrestle a match before you can criticize professional wrestling. It's like, what the hell is that supposed to change? If I wrestle a match, what in my head is going to change? My perception of professional wrestling was greatly altered by bulletin board systems and the internet.
Right.
That's what greatly altered my perception of professional wrestling. Me wrestling a match is not going to change my mindset whatsoever. Anybody who thinks that is a moron.
Right.
And they can't come up with an argument they cannot explain how it's supposed to change my opinion.
Well,
anyway.
and that's the thing. There's a lot of people that say...
one of your callers was acting like that, and that was the catalyst for me ranting so hard against that mindset, where I just basically fired a nuclear bomb.
I don't blame you. There were a lot of people, there's still people to this day that say if you've never been in the business, you don't understand how the business works. And that's not true. There's people that have never been in the business that have a better understanding than some of the people in the business. I think you're one of those people because you know how everything ticks and works. You may not know everything that I've known.
Every little nuance.
Right. But you know enough over your years of experience being a part of this business now that I wouldn't come to you and say, Crimey, you're not a wrestler, you don't know how any of this works. That's not a fair statement to make to somebody that's been on the, I don't want to say the sidelines, but the inner circle. No pun intended.
Well, I'm in the halo at most wrestling shows with a camera, so I used to write show reviews.
Right.
Scott Keith never wrestled a match in his life, and he's made a career of reviewing shows. Anyway, okay, you have the weekly podcast. Tell us about it real quick. We're about out of time.
We've got Superstar Bill Dundee coming to Wrestling Authority Radio on Thursday nights. It'll be at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, and we'll be announcing that soon. You can check us out on Facebook, Wrestling Authority Radio, and Rampage Rants. We try to do 2 shows a week, but sometimes we don't. We've got another TNA guy, former TNA guy that's going to be with us before the end of the year, so we've got some good things coming. We've had to change our schedule because of the new programming adjustment from all the wrestling companies that are just bombarding TV at this point.
Sean Hubbard, I want to thank you for joining me today and taking the slings and the arrows that a lot of people would like to fire at you right now, and I know I'm going to get some heat for doing this interview, but
it needed to be done. A lot of this needed to be said. And look, if there's anybody that's got any other questions, feel free to contact me. I'm not afraid to answer questions. You may not like my answer to them, but I will tell you the truth as best that I can give it. So thank you, Crimey, for your time.
all right.